Meet Michigan, Chapter 5, Lesson 3. Chapter 5, Lesson 3, Ideas to Explore. How did nature provide our minerals? Incentive. An incentive is a reward for doing something. Your dad may give you an incentive to do your homework on time. Lock. This is a way to raise and lower ships. Locks and canals are often used together. People to meet: Douglas Houghton, William Burt. Places to discover: Finland, Keweenaw Peninsula, Norway, Sulaks, Sweden. Words to welcome: coal, limestone, a mostly white soft stone from very old seashells. Minerals, natural resources from under the ground. Copper, gold, iron ore, limestone, and salt are minerals. Ore, a rock with some metal in it. Stock, a paper showing part ownership in a company. Ton, 2,000 pounds. Underground resources help Michigan grow as a state. Think about this question while you read. How did resources like copper, iron, and limestone help our state grow? You have just learned about soil and trees. Now, look at some resources from under the ground. After Michigan became a state, other businesses started to grow. They were built around natural resources too. What is under our feet? Few people think about what is under where they walk. There are some valuable minerals under Michigan. We have copper, iron, and salt. The iron is used to make steel. Oil and natural gas are there too. The oil is made into gasoline for our cars. Limestone also comes from under the ground. It is used to make cement. All of these things are gifts from nature. Why do we have salt and limestone? They came from the oceans. How is that possible? A very long time ago, oceans covered much of the lower peninsula. When the oceans dried up, they left minerals behind. Salt and limestone are two examples. The limestone came from all the seashells left behind. All oceans have salt in them. Salt. Most of the lower peninsula has thick layers of salt underground. In some places, salt was mined. Detroit even had a salt mine. The tunnels of that mine are still under the city. Some salt was cleaned and used for table salt. You might have eaten a little bit of Michigan on your dinner. We also use some to melt ice on our roads. Limestone. There are places in Michigan with much limestone. It can be in thick layers. We have some big limestone pits. One is near Alpena. The white limestone was once the shells of sea creatures. Over much time, the shells changed into limestone. Ships move the limestone to where it's needed. Limestone is used to make cement. Sometimes limestone is cut into blocks to build buildings. It is also ground up and spread on farmers' fields to help the crops grow. Coal and oil from really old plants. Many plants grew along the shore of the ancient sea. They died and fell to the ground. Great amounts piled up and decomposed. The plants became a dark muck. Over a very long time, this plant muck became coal. Some Michigan coal was once mined near Jackson and Lansing. The same thing happened to plants growing in the old sea. Those plants became oil. Jobs and natural resources go together. Natural resources are used to make things people need and want. The resources help provide jobs. Where people live and work often depends on the natural resources nearby. A useful metal, copper. Copper is a very useful metal. It is not quite like any other. When it is clean and shiny, it has its own color. You see copper when you look at a penny. It conducts electricity and heat very well. In the 1800s, it was used to make pots and pans. It went into brass buttons and cannons. Today, it is found in wire, computers, television, and electric motors. The demand for copper is always great. The tribes were the first miners. Long before written history, some tribes used copper. They were the first miners here. They dug the copper on Isle Royale. Isle Royale is a large island. It is far north in Lake Superior. They also dug it on the Keweenaw Peninsula. This is a part of the Upper Peninsula. You can find it easily on a map. It goes way out into Lake Superior. You can still see their small pits in the ground. The copper was used for spear points and arrowheads. Sometimes it was traded to other tribes. Pieces of Michigan copper are found buried at old Indian villages far from our state. After a long time, the tribes stopped mining copper. We do not know why they stopped. Maybe the copper near the surface was gone. Maybe they changed their beliefs about copper. Search and discover. In the late 1830s, the state government wanted to learn about the land. The state was new. The government wondered what could be useful. It wanted to find the valuable things nature provided. The state government hired Douglas Houghton to find them. He traveled across Michigan looking for minerals like copper. He wrote reports about what he found and where it was. The state government felt finding natural resources would benefit everyone. Doing this would be for the common good. Working on projects like this is one of the services state governments can do. We could not do it by ourselves. The Great Copper Rush. Many people were interested in Mr. Houghton's reports. The reports said there was copper on the Keweenaw Peninsula. People were excited. They wanted to get rich quick. They grabbed shovels and wheelbarrows. They got their hats and coats. They got on ships and sailed onto the Great Lakes. It was a Michigan copper rush. That was in 1843. People thought the copper was just lying on the ground. They did not know anything about mining. They believed they could pick up big pieces. They felt they could make a lot of money. It was not that easy. These miners were swatting black flies in the summer. In the winter, it was cold, cold, cold. Everything was frozen. All supplies had to come by ship. No roads reached that part of our state then. Dig down, down, down. Most of the copper is far underground. It was too much work for one person. Even a dozen couldn't do it. Hundreds of hard workers were needed for each mine. The miners needed cash to buy equipment. They started companies. They sold stock in the companies to raise money. Each person who bought the stock owned a part of the company. They thought like entrepreneurs. They were willing to take big risks to mine copper. They might make money or they might not. If they did not find copper, they could lose all their money. The miners needed capital resources. This is equipment used in the mine. They needed shovels and carts to move the metal. They needed hammers to break the rock. They needed machines to pull the metal up from the deep mines. They needed machines to carry the workers up and down. They also needed human resources. These were the men and the boys working in the mines. Over time, some mines went down almost 2 miles. Those were very deep holes. Digging and working such a mine was expensive. Once they got it up to the top, the copper had to go by ship to Detroit. That was a long trip, and the ship sailed over 500 miles. Nature's roadblock brings the Soo Locks. The trip was not easy. There was a big problem. At Sault Ste. Marie, there were swift rapids. This is where Lake Superior and Lake Huron meet. Lake Superior is about 20 feet higher than Lake Huron. A huge amount of water pours out of Lake Superior. Big ships were wrecked if they tried to go between the two lakes. The cargo had to be taken off the ships in one lake and loaded onto ships in the other lake. The unloading and reloading was hard work. It was expensive work. It was slow work. That copper was heavy. A way was needed to help ships go between the two big lakes. There were some people who thought like entrepreneurs. They had a big idea. Entrepreneurs often have big new ideas. Some big new ideas work and some do not. They thought about building a canal between the lakes. Remember, a canal is a man-made river. They would have locks in the canal. These locks would raise and lower ships. An incentive to build the locks. Our nation's government wanted the canal and the locks too. Well, some people did. Others felt Michigan was just a wilderness. Still, the nation's government offered an incentive to do this job. An incentive is a reward or bonus for doing a certain action. Your mom says she will give you $5 if you are not late for the school bus this month. The $5 is an incentive. The government felt the canal and locks would benefit everyone. Building it would also be for the common good. This is another service government can do for us. Land for the locks. The government offered land as an incentive. The entrepreneurs would get a large amount of land, 750,000 acres. They would only get it if the job was done by a certain time. The government offered land because they had plenty of it. The government did not offer money. In those days, it did not have much money. Oh, it being the government. The government did not have much money. In 1855, the canal was finished. It goes around the rapids at Sault Ste. Marie. This big project took 2 years. About 1,600 men built the canal and the locks. Locks raise and lower ships between the two big lakes. We call them the Soo Locks. Gravity helps the locks work. To raise a ship, water comes in from Lake Superior. The ship raises, then it can sail out onto Lake Superior. The Soo Locks are an example of changing the environment. People did it to meet their needs. The locks were a great help to mining in Michigan. One natural resource helped move another. Ships used the water in the Great Lakes. Ships filled with copper and iron sailed from lake to lake. This helped the mining business. At one time, more copper was mined here than at any other place in the world. Towns started because of the mines. Before the mines, there were few towns in that part of the state. When the mines started, many people moved here. They found work in the mines. One mine had over 2,000 workers. Others worked on ships moving the copper and iron. Some worked in stores selling supplies. Some were teachers and some were preachers. New towns began. People even came from other countries for jobs. Soon, the Upper Peninsula had miners from Norway, Sweden, and Finland. Often, these workers felt the UP was like their old home. They both had pine trees and cool weather. A few left and went back home, but most stayed. They brought their customs to Michigan. They helped build our state. Now, it is too expensive. As the years went by, the mines went deeper and deeper. It was very expensive to run such deep mines. Later, copper was found in other states and other countries. The copper in those places was not so deep. It did not cost so much to mine it. There once were copper mines at Central. This was in the Keweenaw Peninsula. The first mine began in 1854. It had good profits. Before long, about 1,250 people worked and lived there. The mines and the town had 130 buildings. Over the years, 52 million pounds of copper came from the mines at Central. Then, in 1898, the mines closed. The copper was too hard to reach. Almost everyone left to find work someplace else. Today, Central is a ghost town. A church and about a dozen buildings are all that are left behind. More Michigan copper mines closed. The last one was in 1995. The copper is still there, but far, far underground. It is too expensive to get it out. Other places have human resources that cost less. They do not have to pay their workers as much. They do not have money. They do not have many laws to protect the environment. Those mines do not have the extra costs of protecting the environment. Iron, another useful metal. Iron was found in Michigan soon after copper mining began. Iron is a key resource used in industry. It is used to make steel. It is used for tall buildings, cars, and nails. Here's how iron was discovered in Michigan. William Burt traveled to the Upper Peninsula. He was a surveyor. In 1844, he and his crew were working near Negaunee. Mr. Burt was trying to make good maps. For his work, he used a compass. He needed to know which way was north and which was south. My compass is crazy. One day, his compass needle did not point north at all. What could be wrong? Mr. Burt called out, "Boys, look around and see what you can find." Some men went east and some went west. They all came back with pieces of iron. Iron can be magnetic. It attracted the compass needle. This surprised everyone. No one in Michigan had any idea the state had this mineral. Finding iron ore was a very nice surprise. Where were the iron mines? Iron mines started near Marquette. Others were near Iron Mountain. Ironwood and Iron River had mines too. These new towns began because of the iron mines. Families moved to those places. What do you think it was like to start a new town? What was it like to move somewhere that was a wilderness the year before? They needed machines and equipment. Iron mines also needed capital resources. Some mines had water in them. It just kept coming in all the time. One mine had 3,000 gallons of water coming in every minute. That would fill a swimming pool in about 10 minutes. A huge pump was built for that mine. It was an expensive capital resource. Ships brought supplies to the Upper Peninsula. The parts of that pump are one example of what they carried. Big docks were built to load ore onto ships. One is at Marquette. Another is at Escanaba. Later, railroads were built to carry people and iron ore. All of this happened because iron ore was scarce in other places. Working in a mine. Would you like to have a job in a mine? If you think you are not old enough, you are wrong. If you think you're not old enough, you are wrong. You could work in a mine in those times. There were no laws to keep children from working then. Often, boys worked in the mines with the men. It was hard work. It was dangerous work. Workers of all ages were often hurt and sometimes died. What was it like in the mines? This is what Charles Wright said in 1877. We were standing near the edge. We looked down. We saw the small lamps of the busy miners. It was dim from the weak light. They looked like evil spirits, all the more so because of the clanging of the drills and the hammers. We heard the explosions from the blasts. We heard the rumbling of the ore cars moving up and down the shafts. All these sounds echoed and re-echoed from the rocky walls. How much iron came from Michigan? Today, Michigan has only 2 iron mines. They still produce much iron ore. These are called open pit mines because iron ore is near the surface. They are not underground. Trucks go down and haul up the ore. Both mines are near Marquette. They still supply an important part of all the iron mined in the United States. Over the years, workers have mined a lot of iron ore. How much did they mine? It was more than 1 billion tons. All of this came from our Upper Peninsula. That is a big pile of natural resources. It went into products used all over the United States. It went into cars, bridges, buildings, and even thumbtacks. Moving the iron Ships still carry the iron ore. Marquette and Escanaba have big, tall docks to load the ships. The ships move the iron ore to ports in many places. Some of the ore may even go across the ocean.